Okay, so it is Sunday morning here in Frazier Park, California, where it's not only a day of rest, but it's my day of being fully under house arrest, which is sort of an interesting experience, actually. And we're on lesson number 137 of the Workbook of A Course in Miracles. When I am healed, I am not healed alone. And, you know, conceptually, these lessons become to be a joke after a while. I mean, it is really a joke book when you begin to really not only understand but have the experiences that allow you to understand this as real. I mean, as true in that sense. You sort of start to get the jokes. When I am healed, I'm not healed alone, because all sickness is a function or an effect of separation. Sickness is what separation is. And of course, the only way to not be separate is to not be alone. So healing would have to, when you're healed, when I am healed, I am not healed alone. You couldn't possibly be alone any longer, because being alone is in a sense, what effectively makes you sick. Sickness is isolation, for it seems to keep oneself apart from all the rest, to suffer what the others do not feel. It gives the body final power to make the separation real and keep the mind in solitary prison, apart and held in pieces by a solid wall of sickened flesh, which it cannot surmount. The world obeys the laws that sickness serves, of course, but healing operates apart from them. I think there's another important aspect to this lesson, because what he's beginning to suggest and he's beginning to asking us to accept, and through the acceptance of it and the enactment of it through our practice of these lessons, what begins to happen is you recognize that the world that we think we see, which includes the body that we think we're seeing out of as well, is not solid. It's not solid in the sense that it it takes on the attributes that we give it, as we project it, and in the perception of it, it proves that what we're projecting is real. But it's all a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the reason why I'm laughing is going to be difficult to explain, because when your mind begins to open up, you see the unreality of all of this, and the inability for it to be what you think it is, because you come to know what reality is. Reality can be known, and then your heart and your mind can begin to serve the purpose of the soul's reality. And what happens is even your perception of what's occurring changes, because what you're projecting is no longer the same idea of a solid world and a solid body that's with pieces that are quite apart from the rest of it. One of the things that I also have noticed in this lesson is that he's beginning to offer us the understanding and the key as to how the real world can also be seen where the unreal world once was, because it's much like the way it occurs is much like the way in which our bodies seem to heal as our minds shift within the understanding of this consciousness that we're utilizing as a vehicle of learning, as a way in which to learn our way back to our original state of creation. It's impossible that anyone be healed alone. In sickness, must he be apart and separate, of course. But healing is his own decision to be one again and to accept his self with all its parts intact and unassailed. Obviously, you can get these things conceptually. The concepts can make sense, but it's in the utilization of the concepts in moments when we're sort of given a very clear alternative as to what we're going to choose to believe, wherein which the experiences occur. In other words, there are moments, and we're choosing all the time, make no mistake about it, but there are obviously moments when we're offered the ability to choose again. And as we begin to, in those moments, choose differently, what happens is our experience reinforces the choice that we made when we chose differently, and something other than what's been occurring happens. Now, sickness would prove that lies must be true, but healing demonstrates that truth is true. The separation sickness would impose has never really happened. Now, conceptually, as I say, you can get that, and you can get all these concepts right, but without the application of the principles that are being brought to you in these concepts, without the utilization of the concepts in these obvious moments of choice, they have no ability to bring about an experience in and of itself. Now, we can have these transcendent moments, but it's what we glean, what we glimpse in the transcendence that needs to be applied within our own heart and mind, seemingly within an illusion of space and time, in order to make that manifest and integrate it and integrate ourselves back into reality that we get in the transcendence. So the idea, and people are going to begin to be able to read it, the idea that salvation is a collaborative venture is a corollary to this truth, that when I'm healed, I'm not healed alone. And there's some passages that will soon be available to people to read, where Jesus begins to talk to Helen about being a child of light, and how the children of light, and he uses, in a sense, the metaphor of sky and the stars, and perhaps we would, recognize as the signs of the zodiac. And he makes a reference, and he says, children of light must allow their constellations of light to be rearranged for God's purpose. So much like we look up into the stars at night and we see a group of stars that we have called a constellation and given a name to because of the image we think they represent, we must likewise loosen ourselves from the structures that we use to maintain our identity, just as we can loosen our minds when looking at these constellations and begin to see other things as they collaborate and cooperate to bring to us another vision that perhaps wasn't available to us when our mind was fixed on thinking that the signs of the zodiac had a reality other than the reality that we were given them in the meaning that we accepted because other people told us to. So it is much the same way. So we come together in assortment and as children of light. And when we come together, we each have a purpose in the coming together that enables us to serve God's purpose individually, and to show us how through collaborating, all fulfilling God's purpose, we can work together as we do in creation, in a sense, and bring about things that were not capable or not possible for us to bring about when we were both working alone or working in another constellation of light. And the ability to freely move around and join with our brothers wherever we are is what the purpose of the miracle worker serves. So he doesn't have to live within a tight structure to maintain his identity as a body in space and time. He can loose the world from all he thought it was. And in that loosening, the fluidity, the liquidity of the space and time arrangements allow us to enter into new agreements for the same purpose, to show us that in our joining, something greater occurs than the sum total of the little parts that are involved. And of course, that's what creation is. So we're constantly, as our mind is healed, getting a sense of what we are as creative in reality. As we undo our static condition in space-time, which uses sickness to demonstrate its reality, and which now becomes a way of healing, becomes a way of showing us that there's another way of operating, because there's a reality that is quite different from the one we thought we lived in. And he introduces the idea of the real world here. Well, as we come together and join miraculously with our brothers and undergo these healings that we undergo, that occur seemingly in our bodies in the world of space and time, and we watch the miraculous effects of joining, what eventually dawns on us is the idea that if the brotherhood of man and mankind were all working for a single purpose, that both serve the purpose of their soul and serve the purpose of the souls that have come together in this new constellation, all in service to God, as all souls already are, that we can have this thing called the real world be made manifest right where we thought that the world of sickness, pain, suffering, and death was. And it doesn't require, in the sense that we think it requires to maintain the world, work. What it requires is the willingness to allow all things to be done through us, through the joint power of the Christ that we are, based on the reality of the Father who created us, to demonstrate his fatherhood and our ability to be brothers in creation, and therefore brotherhood here. Now, you want to talk about peace of mind, where there is nothing against you, because there's nothing to be against you, because all of us are, in a sense, operating within the oneness of our own reality. Even here within space and time, we begin to do that. I was shown in a vision how any three brothers come together, working within the harmony of their own true creative reality, with each one having decided to fulfill their function in God's plan for salvation, where they let their hearts and their mind return to the service of their soul, as they work together in this brotherhood that's given to them as our constellations of light come together for a purpose, could harmonize a whole valley and change the nature of the conditions of the world around them, so as to bring about peace in the valley. There'll be peace in the valley. That's why we have these songs as representations of possibilities, because the muses, who seem to be one step before us, lay the foundation and open up space and time, so that as we begin to hear the message in everything, and our minds and hearts serve this new purpose in all of our things, we go from perceiving this static world of space and time, where we think we have to manufacture the things to help us survive. We go to the service of the Lord in his purpose of painting his masterpiece through us. And as we do this, the world seems to change around us because our minds and our hearts have been changed. And we can live in a healed state of a healed condition as the healing continues to extend to all things, because this isn't a reality in that sense. It's not solid as we think. Our solid hand hitting a solid desk proves that it's solid, both are solid to us. But to an open, unsealed mind, the ability for it to prove the solidity is equally the ability to show us that if we change our mind, it's not what we thought. We have given it the meaning, all the meaning it has, and as we change our mind, it takes on new meaning. So, a lot of people tend to use these first lessons of the workbook of A Course in Miracles as a way to challenge each other and each other's perception and meaning, forgetting that there's a whole second part of the workbook in which we're here to gain true perception rather than continue in the old perception, and to allow the meaning to be written. So yes, it's still true that we will give it all the meaning that it has, but when we come together and join in union and sickness is healed, we're no longer giving it the meaning that it had in separation, but we're sharing in the joy of the meaning that is being presented to us in the perception of the projection of our union rather than our separation. And things can be quite different. Yet the desire to remain alone and try to get this conceptually and do it on your own in that sense, it's the reason why there ultimately are Course in Miracles groups, yet the Course in Miracles groups haven't really discovered their true purpose yet. They think their true purpose is to come together to study the Course, when their actual true purpose is to come together, heal their mind, and join in a new perception that brings about a new world all around them that offers healing, love, and the unity of the oneness that we're in. Rather than discussing concepts, come together, loosen the world from what they thought individually as they loosen the world from what they were getting collectively in the sense, and they see a new world around them. It's real. It glows with the love and the light that they've offered each other, not because they decide to stay separate and hide behind their concepts, but because they came together to drop their concepts and learn something brand new, not conceptually, but experientially. Now, if we can get Course in Miracles to begin to do that, now we'd have something going on. Most come together much like church socials do, in basements of churches, in order to think they're not alone, only to go back to the loneliness and isolation that they run to because they can't stand each other really, and because they haven't discovered forgiveness for themselves, therefore offer their brother no forgiveness either. Now that's what we need to begin to overcome, and those are the purposes that we need to be allowed to serve. Not coming together to teach each other, coming together to unlearn what we've been teaching each other, and let the one teacher that we all have contact with teach us in the surety of his mind that we're sure in him. We are certain in the Lord. And as we all begin to utilize the mind of Christ rather than the mind that's been ruled by the ego, you're going to see a hell of a lot of different things go on than you previously thought, in a much more miraculous and graceful way, because it is by grace that we live, and it is by grace that we're released. The only way we could be dreaming a dream of separation is that somewhere we were created by the grace of God, and we can share in that grace right here and right now if we allow ourselves to, rather than having to do conceptual dances for each other to prove something that can't be proved except within the machinations of one's own mind. Healing must thus be called a counter dream which cancels out the dream of sickness in the name of truth, but not in truth itself. Just as forgiveness overlooks all sins that never were accomplished, healing but removes illusions that have never occurred. That's a hell of a lot different than the forgiveness and the healing that we think we undergo when we go to a doctor and he isolates our disease from the rest of our body and attempts to utilize some sort of pill or ray or chemical to eradicate it, rather than to, as a symbol that we think that we're separate, and begin to look for what's keeping us separate so as to allow us to join once again and eliminate the symbols of separation by allowing them to become symbols of the wholeness and the unity that we're perceiving in ourselves as we forgive ourselves and forgive the doctors that we gave power to make decisions for us, as we take back the power of our own mind and begin to decide for ourselves in the grace and glory of God what's meant to be, rather than to allow the doctors to tell us what's happening in the illusion of space and time, which is always a rejection of reality. So when I'm healed, I'm not healed alone, because being alone is always the problem. And when you're not healed alone, it's like those molecules that they use in super colliders, that no matter how far away the pairs that they are, when one thing happens to one of them, something happens to the other one, and they have observable effects. Now, because of the nature of space and time, blah, 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 all going on right now, you have no idea when the miracle of healing occurs to you, what else is healed somewhere else in the nature of space and time that you were joined to in separation, in a sense, that you were both using the same thing to stay separate. You now have healed what you were using to stay separate, and as you change, it changes as well. It's the best I can do with that idea, but it's all around you when you begin to see it. And what happens is, when my mind opens up, it's all around me, and I can't help wondering how people don't see this. Yet I understand how they don't, because once I didn't either. So spend today under house arrest and see how free you really are. Give yourself a break. It's Sunday. Allow yourself to be healed. You won't be healed alone. See how everything is joined in the healing that occurs, in spite of the distances that we think space and time are. But it's going to be, but you will take joy in joining with your brother, and you will get the effects of that joining. Soon enough, of course, the miracle groups will begin to come together for a true purpose, rather than the false purpose of attempting to study and prove to each other their conceptual acuity, in spite of the fact that they're suffering aloneness, because they won't let their brother in. So therefore they keep their brothers out.